in principle, it should be all easy. But humans make it so complex with legislation, tax rules, provider setup, provider technology, and
I'm glad to hear someone else say it because I hate benchmarking.
How do you make sure they're using the tool in the right way to make people 10x more productive, right, or more efficient?
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, the essential podcast for rewards and benefit leaders. I'm Carl, VP of Benefit Design and Partnerships here at Ben, and joined by my co-host.
I'm David, one of the founders here at Ben. So today we're really excited to have a conversation with Christina. Many months in the making, and so we're really excited to be having and chatting about all things benefits, really. So Christina, welcome.
thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really, really excited. Amazing.
Maybe we start with a quick kind of introduction, right? A quick background. I don't need to go super deep, but just so the audience get a bit of a sense of who you are and what's your role within benefits.
Super. So I'm Christina. I currently work at Cohesity, and I've only been there 4 or 5 months, so relatively new. I've listened to a few of previous podcasts, and I'm not going to surprise you. I landed in benefits by complete chance. There you go. So I started my formal career in HR as a generalist at Cisco Systems, and through years was given a chance to choose which specialty I wanted to go to, and I kind of picked benefits. Sounded really lovely, and stuck through. Why? I knew comp wasn't for me. I love data, but I don't love Excel spreadsheets as much as a comp professional should and does, and that's great. I think benefits is a good combination for me. Some analytics, but also some funky human. There is a little bit of creativity there through programs. So I think that's why. And then kind of stuck for too many years now, probably 15 plus. So and moved. So I think one of the interesting maybe thing about my career is I spend an awful lot of time with Cisco Systems. That's a very, very large corporate. And then I moved through different industries. So I went into oil and gas. That was interesting. Consulting. That was also interesting. And then came back to high tech, which I think is the best industry. Maybe fintech is another good one.
Yeah.
And why do you think it is the best industry?
It's really innovative. I love innovation. I'm one of the people I always look at what can be achieved. So more of a visionary. In that sense, and to me, high tech being in really innovative industry, that also reflects in benefits. So I love that. I love the new things that come up.
So typically we like to start the podcast with a bit of what's in the news recently, and as ever in this day and age you can't get away from the topic of AI, and it's everywhere in what we're doing, but also just in general. So I think one of the headlines that we had was that nearly 4 in 10 companies will replace workers with AI by 2026, survey shows. So thoughts, how does that impact benefits? How does it impact how we deliver benefits? How do we think about benefits? And
what does it do, I guess, for employee morale, and that sort of thing? I guess it's an interesting topic that companies are going to have to start thinking about, right?
Yeah. A lot of, I think, AI, you can't meet someone and not talk about AI. It's everywhere on the lovely brochure here, right?
No sense guide to
exactly.
AI and benefits now.
But it's a hard question. I think there is an aspiration, and aspiration is great to some extent. I think AI gives us so much capability to enhance really manual, boring processes. That's amazing, right? So I think if I look at my team's work and my work, a very large chunk of it is literally you take an information and then you're either trying to digest it or digest it in a particular format, or you're trying to update in Excel ongoing. It's a lot of just low value stuff, right? Yeah. Whether it's going to happen in 2026, I think some jobs will be disrupted for sure. Like anything you can automate quickly probably should as well. But in benefits, throughout my career, I've been working in multinationals. I love this work because you can see the diversity of one program, but being deployed in so many different ways across countries. And I think that's what's driving the complexity around benefits is, in principle, it should be all easy. But humans make it so complex with legislation, tax rules, provide a setup, provide a technology. And I haven't seen a best example where one thing can be taken and be exact same everywhere. And I think that's what's stalling innovation within benefits HR overall, I think, is this complexity of really fragmented countries and how things work in those countries. And then on top of it, you have human preferences, humans love holding on to old things, letting go. So I think it's ambitious. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I do think within benefits in particular, we are way away from that.
Yeah.
On the morale, though, I do agree it will have a hit. And especially if I think about me in my very much younger self, you kind of learn on the job through these boring tasks, right? Like what's your first job? Like analyzing, I don't know, what PTO entitlements are in different countries and how they're delivered. And you kind of learn by that. And I think that's the piece which I am struggling myself with AI is, yes, we can automate this low value work, but actually how are we going to teach the new generation of professionals and what's that going to look like? Maybe these jobs won't exist. Maybe that's good. And as the positivist in me thinks, well, actually AI can enable me doing my job faster to a better degree and be only in strategic level. But then how many Christinas does the world need, right? Like then it's going to be a really small pool of niche professionals. So it's a tough one.
It's quite an interesting one. I think as we think about what the impact is, it's like, as you said, right? Like how do you make sure that you're using the tool in the right way to make people 10x more productive, right? Or more efficient and more impactful, right? Because, but then how do you train the people who are coming up who don't necessarily have those experiences? So I think there's a lot to that. I guess Carl and I was joking as well, if every worker is replaced by AI, what
benefits to AI one?
Also true, but maybe there will be some new suits of benefits for AI agents, right?
Exactly. What benefits do the AI need? More data center capacity, more GPUs.
Exactly. More energy.
One thing that we want to touch upon is the concept of benchmarking, right? And it's a great topic, and it's still a very commonplace in the industry. That's how most people make decisions around benefits. You have a kind of an interesting view on how you think about benchmarking and its place around benefits. So maybe you want to start with a little bit of that.
Yes, benchmarking is two thoughts on benchmarking. One, I think so in a lot of cases, the role of benchmarking is over-exaggerated. I've worked for a number of companies where, despite me having an experience, I've been asked to pay for a benchmark report from an independent consultancy, which would deliver exact same results as I would say. So that's one. So my challenge with benchmarking is, yes, it gives a data point. I'm not in any way disregard knowing where you are as a company in the stack of other companies is important. But it's just one data point. Why in the current day and age, and with AI as well, I think the whole benchmarking system needs to be rethought. And the second point is around how does benchmarking actually reflect what you are as a company. So every company is trying to create their own narrative, right? And you have your own pool of people that choose to work there or sometimes don't choose. I mean, it depends. But the whole point of benefits is cater to the audience and the challenges they experience. So they solve the problem. How does benchmark help you solve a problem? That's where I have a little bit of a disconnect. So, and I think on first point, in my dream world, so if I were to wake up and think, what would I like if I had a magic wand? I think where I would love to be is there is technology now that can pull data with AI, right? Pull data from all sorts of sources. And that data, it can be encrypted, it can be like stripped of company name, but why isn't there like a place where I as an employer can go in and it's like every single company's benefits, they're kind of laid out, right? So I can go and see, okay, in this industry, companies of my size, this is what typically happens. And in reality, to be fair, benefits are 80-20, right? So 80% of benefits are pretty much the same. We're talking insurances, pensions, risk insured. That's it. And then where you can bring this creative is this 20% where you really, really understand your demographic and really tap into what touches them emotionally, like what are they experience and how can we as employer help them if they have any challenges or needs, etc. So I think that's where my gripe with benchmark. It's really high level. It's like gives you, yes, a largely understanding. To get into the real nuance, realistically, you need to pay for a bespoke survey anyway, which is out of, it's cost prohibitive for a lot of companies, especially the ones that need the most, because in larger companies, you have a pool of people, they can spend time on researching, etc. In smaller companies, just want data. So that's my dream, to have one place where it's open source, like every company plugs into that and we can kind of see what's happening for trends, but then translate that information into something tangible.
I mean, firstly, I'm glad to hear someone else say it, because I hate benchmarking. To me, you should look inward, not outward. I hate this notion of peering over the fence and seeing what others are up to. Like, to me, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
I want to mould what my house looks like based on my needs, not based on what the Joneses are doing down the street, right? And I think it's just daft to me that we still live in that world where people are, because otherwise nobody is really taking the opportunity to improve or enhance if everyone's just keeping that. That balance of everyone's sort of here, will sort of hover around here. No one's. I mean, there are industries that will take a lead on that. Tech, for example, there'll be an outlier, won't there? And everyone's like, "Oh, the new level is up here now. Now let's all try and climb up towards that."
Yeah.
But in terms of that sort of inward-looking piece, I guess that's still a very important part, of this, isn't it? And perhaps we should benchmark more of the inward-looking piece, like rather than the outward-looking piece. So, what are companies doing where they have an abundance of employees that are struggling financially, or an abundance of employees that are, rather than just the headlines stuff of benchmarking.
Yeah,
it's a good point, right? So like most benchmarks are like, oh, it's what's happening in the industry or the size of company, but it should be around need, right? Actually, ultimately at the end of the day, as opposed to. But so why do companies over rely on benchmarking then? Like, why are we still doing it?
I think it's easier, isn't it? Like, because you outsource the decision making to some extent to consultants. That's what happens, right? Yeah. Like, you are a busy leader, you don't have time to go, and I think benefits is still relatively niche profession. Yes, a lot of it is common sense, but the nuanced stuff sits with people who have been doing it for a long time. And when you are a leader of a business that needs to have a quick decision, yes, you'd rather consultancy, give me your advice, and that's it. It's just easier. And also what I found in my experience, when you try and reach out and really explore what the needs of employees are, this can potentially be really, really tough, because you open up the discussion and there is almost an expectation that comes straight after that something will be delivered. Sorry, I just tapped. So when we reach out to the employees and ask them the question, what would be what are the challenges you experience? What would solve them? Straight away, there is an assumption that something will happen after. And sometimes in benefits world, it's not like that. It might take a year, right?
Yeah. If at all, right? Like maybe you don't have a budget.
Or maybe you don't have a budget, exactly. And I think that's where sometimes it's really tricky to find that balance. How do you position it? How do you have the conversation in such a way that kind of gives you enough input, but at the same time protects you from heightened expectations. So I think that's the challenge from a practical point of view. But I'll actually, to your point around everyone sitting and looking over the fence, I think there is a really interesting dynamic that's happening right now where medical costs have been increasing steadily, right? And medical premiums, everyone is starting to really scratch their head as companies, like how much more can we fund?
Yeah.
Yet, when the renewal comes, so I'll give you India for an example, the level of coverage remains pretty much the same, and everyone is sitting and thinking, well, I'm guided by the benchmark, right? So, and benchmark doesn't change. But then at the same time, I know that my employees cannot get the same health cover as they did 5 years ago for exact same premium. So when are we going to start thinking, well, actually, what does the meaningful benefit look like to you? And it will lead to a leap in price and cost, etc.
Yeah.
But we're all waiting because that's the rule of the benchmark, right?
Yeah.
So you're in the end, you're not doing the right by employee. You are just doing like to stay in your.
I always
lane.
think a benchmark report is a that'll do document.
Yeah,
It's,
check the box, right?
Yeah, that'll do. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're broadly in line with that. Yeah. Move on. It's just we need to move away from that.
And I guess it's one of the things that prevents innovation more broadly, right? Because if you're always just being like, okay, we're just going to do the same thing, like one, it's not actually helping you with the end objective, right? Which is, for most companies to attract, to retain, to engage, make productive, right? But if you're just offering the same thing that everybody else, how are you attracting, right? So
well, it's it's that, but it's also, I think, like, people don't look deep enough into their organisations, at their people. They don't look into their people enough to find out what their fears, desires, needs, concerns are. I mean, like, if you took benchmarking, like the literal sort of definition of someone peering over the fence, they will take it to the extent of, well, benchmarking, we can compare a similar company, because they live in a house. Okay, so you've got two houses, they're similar, right? And then it'll be like, well, that family next door's got a dog and they've got two children. We've got a dog and two children, therefore it's a comparator. Well, it's not, because my two children might be 14 and 16, yours might be 1 and 2. You know what I mean? It's the deeper you go into it, the
more
less,
irrelevant.
the more irrelevant it becomes, doesn't it? And I think, like, at its very base, at its very core, it is irrelevant. Because you should go that deep.
Yeah.
You should understand what your employees want and need.
But I think it's the challenge there is the lead time, because you need time to invest. I would argue that you should research much, much more before you start making decisions. And normally it happens backwards. You kind of get your report, somebody comes to you, a leader comes to you, we are trying to hire here and they have these wonderful benefits, and then all of the HR starts like scraping, okay, let's introduce the gym membership and the whatever else. And in the end, it just dilutes the proposition, because you're always trying to, you can't be Google. Google is one company out of how many thousands, millions, right? Yeah. It's impossible. And I think that's where actually in my previous company I had a beauty of creating something from scratch, and we had some very limited selection of benefits, but we knew that those benefits worked for people who were working for us. We didn't have to clean the history. But once you start taking away things, that's when
Is there a role for benchmarking now? Or should
I think there is. I think it's a good data point, it's a reference point, right? And also, I would say those tedious reports, the benchmarking reports, they're quite good for inspiration, I think. So when I look at, like, what do other companies offer, and you kind of say, oh, that could be interesting. So kind of as a thought-provoking point rather than the final decision driver. I think
I could probably see a world where if you're entering a new market and you're diversifying and you're trying to pull in new talent, like if you're a financial services firm moving into tech and AI, you probably want a benchmark to understand what the lay of the land is. If you're moving into a new country, you probably want a benchmark to understand the lay of the land. But as long as you're not using that as your final, like you said, the final decision maker is this report of nonsense, then I think you're fine. I don't get so much hate for that. You wait to see the comments.
No, a lot of work and sweat and hard tears go into those reports. But it is, I think what happened with well-being stuff, actually, there was a craze of well-being solutions, right? And they were showing up on the benchmarks. And what is happening now? Companies have accumulated these disconnected things. Yeah. None of them, there is not one that brilliant adoption, brilliant utilization rate, and now everyone is trying to slim them down, and it's purely because everyone's that company is doing it, we should do it as well, and it's just following the trend without really understanding, is it actually making sense for us?
I mean, that as a subject in its own, I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's counterproductive, isn't it, to not invest in well-being when there's problems around medical inflation? Surely, like I use this analogy a lot, but everyone is spending more and more money in bailing out the bathwater, and nobody's considering how they turn the tap off. Yeah. So it just seems daft to me that things like benchmarking aren't. Well, again, but this is the problem with benchmarking.
That is the problem with benchmarking.
Nobody else is doing it, therefore I'm not going to do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, does it? If you invest in something like preventative health and well-being, this is the problem with healthcare systems around the world, right? They treat symptoms, not conditions.
Mm-hmm.
It's all intervention, not prevention. You look at something like the NHS ran the smoking cessation campaigns in the 90s and right the way through it, 2000s. It's probably one of the biggest success stories globally of a preventative campaign from a state healthcare system. Like, we should be doing more of that. Companies should be doing more of it, but benchmarking doesn't tell them to. So.
No, exactly.
And I mean, it gets us to the next point, right? Which we want to talk about, like flexibility, right? And why are we not at a point where true flexibility is possible?
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe, I mean, this has to do with benchmarking, has to do with the ability for employees to actually put their benefits investments dollars. Yeah. So, like, what do you think is holding flexibility back? I guess.
Oh, I think multiple factors. And flexibility, to me, I think that's the holy grail. But it's really, really hard to put to life. And reason being, I think part of it is the whole operations behind it. So in terms of the key factors that I think hold it back is, firstly, the sheer operational nightmare that it brings.
Yeah.
Especially if we are talking multiple countries. Because every country has their own regulatory requirements, the tax regulations, things that need to be represented or reflected in the however you want to administer. Then you have choices. So ideally, I guess you don't want to have this annual event. So in the UK now it's possible we're getting to a point where it's anytime selection. Not a lot of countries have that flexibility just yet. But with that comes, again, somebody at any point can come and completely shift what they want. And I think that is a major, just technical functional problem, right, for a lot of HR, because you need to really enable that anytime reporting for payroll purposes, for HR purposes, etc.
It's a really good point, right? The more movement, the more selection there is, the more work there is.
Yes, right, exactly.
At the back end.
I've tried, so in my previous company, we didn't have any benefits tech, and just one selection process once a year meant that I had to and it's once a year, but then you have new joiners. They join, they make selections. Then you have leavers. So you find yourself in a position where you constantly have to update stupid spreadsheet, and that's just one country, one potential benefit, right? If you are really trying to scale, that's impossible. So I think that's a major operational thing. Tax application or just governmental rules, I think they make it tricky, because really, as a conscientious professional, I'm not a tax advisor. I know what generally the trends are, but I don't know, give me a country where I might not have worked before. I want someone to really review and tell me, okay, this is taxable, not taxable. That knowledge usually costs, right? And not every company can afford it. So that's a big, then I don't want to put a program in place where I know either employees are going to see the bill at the end or company, so not ideal. I think cost, actually, so in my mind, when I think about it, and that's my, again, another dream, I have a lot of dreams about benefits, but if I were to ever get to a point where we can say, okay, we give you the funds, and you go and procure. So, Netflix was a brilliant example where they really tried to challenge, and then they kind of got pulled back as they got bigger. They kind of came out and said, we have 300 employees. We just pay them the highest compensation. They go and procure.
Figure it out.
Yeah. And it took one case of somebody senior dying, I think, passing away, and they've introduced life insurance for everyone. I was like, no brainer. So there are some benefits where it makes sense to kind of say, for everyone, we just want to make sure you're insured, because you're unlikely to think about your death when you're young, especially. But from a purchasing power, especially these mid-sized companies where you're not Oracle, you're not Cisco, you're not, Amazon, where you have like sheer mass, even if it was 10% take up. A company of 1,000 people, 10% take up, you have 100, you have no bargaining power.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly, and that's another possible solution if there is a marketplace. So you just connect to this common marketplace, and with the money that your company gives you in a tax efficient way, you can purchase and invest where you feel is right for you. And I think that would be amazing, because yes, insured market is kind of solving it by pooling arrangements and all of that stuff. There is nothing like that in the market of all the other benefits. And I think the choices also becomes restrictive if you are trying to do it as a company, like individually, right? There are how many contracts can you make realistically with providers. It all takes time. Every contract, like everyone forgets that all of that boring stuff of contract management still needs a human to actually, sign it, review it.
And it's so much to do, right? As in like, talk about the data, the liability, there's so much to do actually.
It's interesting. I mean, we agree, and that's why we've sort of spent a lot of time building a solution that combats all of that. So central invoicing and central contracting through us, rather than the marketplace of providers, preferential rates leaning on our purchasing power when they don't have it. So I think I completely agree that it's a problem that companies experience, but there are solutions out there. This is where you wink at the camera.
At the early stages, though, right? Even us, right? Where it's just like we're getting started. Like there should have been flexible benefits It's not a new concept, right? It's been around for like 30 years, and yet nobody's actually cracked it.
But what does flexible benefits really mean, though? This is the thing.
It's a good question. What is, Christina, what does flexible benefits mean?
To me, the ultimate flexibility would be I just get a pot of money and I can purchase my benefits according to my needs and in the most cost-effective way. I think that would be...
Total freedom to purchase whatever you want?
Other than life insurance and mandatory pension contributions. I think that's... Yeah.
Sure.
Why? Why do you go?
I think like the whole point of group insurance is collective bargaining, isn't it? Ultimately, right? So bad risk, good risk, all combined into one to create an environment where there's palatable risk. If you start giving freedom to people around medical insurance, for example, then all of a sudden you get the people that want to claim going into it, those that don't. So I think I would probably just put medical insurance in that bucket with life insurance and pension, and probably income protection as well. I think it's probably the most undervalued.
Yeah, income protection, agree. But medical insurance, so yes, I've been having similar debate years ago with one of my colleagues who hugely respect. And at the time I was many years younger, and I was like, I don't want to be part of group medical. I pay tax on benefit that I don't want to use. Why? So I opted out. It was a big deal for her. She was managing UK benefits at the time, and I think she took offense on me. But again, going back to this marketplace, maybe it's actually more of a comment around how insurances are run. Because why is it that a group of people in a company can be a pool, but across individually I can't be? So comparethemarket.com could manage it for car insurance, right? Why can't it be done for medical insurance?
Yeah.
It is a bit silly as well, right? And even the concept of sort of risk and pull. So like if you're really healthy, you're paying higher premiums than you would have to otherwise, right? And if you're really sick and utilize a lot, but I mean that is the whole concept.
Well, I think it's the ease of access as well. You'd have to go through underwriting to prove that you're healthy and all this sort of stuff.
There you go.
Free cover levels that you get on life insurance and disability. I think there are tangible benefits to group insurance. But I completely agree on the other side of things, certainly around well-being. Like everyone offers gym memberships. There's a lot of people that don't go to the gym, right? And therefore there's no valuable preventative health solution for them.
Right.
An allowance if they want to go and spend it on a new pair of trainers or some rock climbing gear or paddle, whatever they're called. That's the new thing these days, isn't it?
Paddle, yes. Massages, right? I think the knowledge workers, two benefits everyone must get. Massages and vision protection, because we are all sitting in an uncomfortable position.
Yeah. And I mean, it reduces claims as well at the back in the end for insurance.
Should do, exactly. This is the thing, isn't it? If you invest in prevention, you impact intervention.
So how do we get more flexibility, right? So like if that's the goal, we've talked about some of the different solutions, but like what else is needed for the industry to move along?
Well, you guys just need to develop a really solid system to address all of those, and with great user experience. I think user experience is another one. That's a challenge across HR. I think it's the HR technology always gets kind of left behind good 10 years. Benefits
is even worse, right?
Well, yes, but in the model of flexibility, you almost look at it as a consumer grade product,
should be,
right?
Yeah.
It should be. I just go and buy quick and easy, and yet from my experience in multiple countries, it's never as quick and easy. And I think partially it's because the maybe tech is not like it. Maybe like big corporations don't find HR tech that very sexy. I don't know why. It's just but on the other hand, I don't necessarily think that HR professionals have the right skill set sometimes when it comes to tech. So HR are very sometimes quite siloed in a way. We look at policies, we look at programs, etc. It's rare to find a person who really looks at it from a product point of view. And I think that's so I've been following some new wave of HR kind of conversations around HR as a product. And I think we should totally start talking about it more. So if I look at companies like Google, I actually was listening to a really interesting podcast with lady who was leading Google Meet development and the whole delight concept and product. And I think we should totally take that concept and apply it within benefits or other HR programs, because really we're working with humans. And for me as a professional, it's the human aspect that I'm trying to. So I want to appeal to you and put a smile on your face, or for you to feel supported when you need it, right? Absolutely. And that's the delightful experience. But yet, when you have a sick day and you're trying to find what actually needs to happen to you or how your pay is going to be impacted, etc., everything breaks down. My design program can be great, but then you trying to find information about it, reach the provider, submit a claim, all of that stuff completely scraps the work that I've done. And I think that's where I would love to see some really more progress to be done.
I think in general it's too complicated, right? As in, like, communicating benefits is difficult, like people understanding what the benefits are is difficult, people utilizing it is difficult. I mean, we're trying a lot, but like...
Exactly, that's why we're leaning very much into the AI around, rather than having to trawl through all this information around benefits, ask it a question of the issue that you're having. I've hurt my back. Okay, you've got these benefits. This is the way you need to go. That's the way it should be, isn't it?
But it needs to be both, right? So it needs to be proactive, as in like the employees being able to search what they need at a point in time, but then also the discoverability, right? So if you move to a world of fully flexible, you can do whatever you want. Like, how do you find out what are the things that are most beneficial to you, right? So how can sort of either a system, technology, or a company actually help people to make the best decisions for them, right? Because it's complex. It's a multivariate problem, right? Especially when you're dealing with a lot of financial products, retirement programs, insurance programs. It's difficult, and we live and breathe it every single day. And even for me, it's difficult.
True.
Which we get to kind of in this point around the flexibility, the hidden costs of admin, right, and administration as well. So we're already kind of going there, right, with the contractual vendor piece. But what else you think is holding things back, and why is there so much cost, I guess?
A lack of automation. I think that's a major factor. It's still, I think, 10 years ago, we were implementing benefits tech. And we were talking SFTP, transfer of files.
It's still
and they
the
only
same,
have
right?
Exactly my point. Not a lot has changed. It's so incredibly slow moving, and to build APIs, it needs manpower on both sides. So everyone's like, "Oh no, we can't afford it." There must be something that's coming.
I think AI is changing this now, but like it is.
It's a challenge, though, isn't it? Like, we come across it all the time. Like, we're willing, but you've either got younger players that are coming into this space with solutions and provisions that just aren't there yet. And you've got institutions that have been around for 300 or 400 years that are still using abacuses, and they're not ready either.
But it's absolutely great point. And actually, the further I think UK it does get disrupted. It's okay-ish. You go further into Europe, these institutions that you have to partner with are God know how long have been in the market. Their systems are absolutely ancient. It took us, I'll give you one example which puzzled me. There was an error in invoicing, and we asked them, can you reissue the invoice? It's taking us probably by now about a month, and we still haven't got the invoice. That's an invoice, just one invoice. And it's because
crazy,
of their
right?
system. They just say, well, it's a big engine, we need to go through the process. And I'm like, oh my God, we are talking piece of paper, really. But it's throughout. I think the whole processes are not really well designed internally. Your providers don't necessarily, they're kind of automating, but basically what that means, they don't want to talk to you anymore. They kind of send you to some, engine machine that tries to answer, but then it makes errors. nobody looks at end to end. So when I look at the benefit ops, I look at, okay, what's the entry point, what every step that happens. And I think this rigor has gone away somewhere, I feel. Everyone kind of wants to protect their patch, and we don't talk enough anymore in our ecosystem of benefits. So, and that means, so when we talk about AI can only work when you have clear knowledge base, you have clear processes or understanding what the process should be. And at this point in time, I don't think we always understand how the process should be. Nobody, human, sits there and think, this is step by step how it should be. And it's so complicated that you're like, well, I'll give it to AI, but what is it going to give me back?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. The number, so like every benefit operates differently. And then even within a particular benefit, like even when we're talking to our clients that are implementing, you kind of start asking around, how does this benefit work? And we're like, oh, we don't really know. Which is like, I mean, that's crazy, right? Like, how are you offering a thing, letting employees select it, etc., and you don't really know how it works? But that's the reality because it's super complicated, right? So the product itself is really complicated, but then all the processes by which it instantiates is really complicated as well. I guess like, you know, what do we think needs to change in order to, again, lead to less complications, more simple processes, like that prevents people from doing manual things all the time? I'm asking the hard questions right now.
I'll have a first stab at that then. I mean, I think AI will solve a lot of these problems, hopefully. I mean, ultimately, what is the barrier for companies integrating with other businesses? It's cost, isn't it?
It is cost.
You know, so if we can remove the pain of access or the pain of delivery, then everyone will do it, right?
Even though if you think about it, it should be much beneficial for the providers as well, right? So like if you think about it, I mean, companies have sways of people just like in the back office processing this. Like it's even worse at the providers, right? So like, the more you automate it, the better the data quality is going to be, the less risk it's going to generate, like the less costly it's going to be. So it's quite an interesting. Why are they not?
I mean, no, I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder if passing of data, certainly some data as well, like there's sensitivity obviously to that, isn't there? And there's data protection legislation across the world that protects that. And I guess is there a nervousness that if APIs are controlled, not necessarily controlled, I know APIs can run without AI intervention, but if AIs evolve the use of APIs and then have control over APIs, I mean, I'm sure
you're very getting into conspiracy theory here.
I'm sure a bigger worry is Skynet not passing my date of birth on to someone, but I don't know, maybe that's a fear that I don't know, but surely if we remove the barrier to...
Yeah, I mean, why have you seen providers not willing to kind of play ball, or I guess, or what do you think is holding them back as well?
I do think it's cost. Sometimes it's just genuine resources or the cost of actually building some sort of automation. Or their processes, they're so, the insurers particularly, they're so big, right? Yeah. And for them to disrupt one piece of process,
they won't do it. Right?
They won't do it just for one client.
Yeah.
So the whole industry is very, very slow pace. And part of me hopes that it gets disrupted. At some point it has to, because it's interesting actually, talking about data and where the data is. Insurance companies use that data, right? There have been studies that, especially life insurance, where they go deeper into what is the cause of death and how it links to health, and all of that does happen.
Yeah.
Right? In a, I'm sure, GDPR protected way and all of that stuff. So why can't we take it for the better of everyone else, like really compile data and really start looking what actually can prevent those things and make it work with medical insurance and preventative healthcare. So really expand it. And I think at the moment I've seen some attempts from consultancies actually, right? They're trying to build some AI-based models, so they're quite interesting. But again, they're only interesting for larger corporations. What do you do as a mid-sized company?
Yeah.
Even the consultancies, they're massive portfolios with like the Axes and the Bloopers of the world and all these insurance companies. They can't do it. So I guess maybe we need to come together as a whole industry and lobby them, to do this.
I think there is no, part of what's holding everything back, there's no standard, right? So like there's no standard for how things are passed, and if somebody, whoever it is, like creates a standard for how things work, then everybody can plug into that standard. That's really hard to do, right? Because everybody has different incentives and different things like that. And to your point, right? Maybe it should be an industry body or something that comes together and just like, hey, this is the way it's going to work. but it's really hard to get alignment.
Well, I mean, you have Grid and you have like Amy, but I'm not going to say that. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. There's not, but I guess
maybe it's not the appetite. I don't know.
Everything should come down to like a commercial incentive in reality as well, though, right? So I guess a lot of them, I suppose, are scared on the competitive position, especially if you think about insurance products. At the end of the day, are fairly undifferentiated, right? So if the more you standardize and the more you make it easier to switch, then the less value there might be, right? So it's same with the banking industry, actually, right? So in the UK, before an open banking standard, if the government had it come aboard and be like, you have to do this, you like PSD2, which is a payments directive, unless they had to do it, no bank would have.
Yeah,
right? I think it's like something that would have to happen in the same type of way. I guess what else do you see in terms of companies being able to cope with that kind of administrative burden and complexity? Like, how do you see that? What's, I guess, the best you can do for now, right? If no industry body's going to come in and rescue the day, what can we do about it?
I'm afraid I'm disappointed that 15 years ago, there's been a brilliant company, Darwin, that was probably longer, and maybe Thomson's at the time, Thomson's Benefits. They disrupted the market, and yet, can we say that even in the UK, every single company has benefits admin? No. Yeah. So many companies, I am surprised at how still it's a sales pitch. It's not a given that you think, okay, but that is one way to automate your processes. Part of me is thinking maybe with AI and what Copilot are starting to offer, there is a niche for custom agents that will run for smaller companies. You don't need to buy a full-on tech. You just plug something into your I think that's an interesting future thinking. And that could touch on lots of things. I'm quite passionate advocate of a lot of analytics. Yeah. So not just benefits, but across the HR suite. At the moment, it's completely disconnected. You have suite of 14 different platforms in HR, and every one of them will give you some sort of slicing, dicing. None of them really talk to each other. Even companies that use Workday can't see the whole thing, right? Yeah. So there must be something that will connect all of that just for you and can digest it for you and as a leader. But then they start asking, what's the point of HR department if AI can do everything? What's my job? But hopefully that's not going to happen in my life.
I think it's very far away from that. I think it'll be a while. Cool. I guess as we get into wrapping things up, any sort of final thoughts around benefits evolution just in general before we get to the final segment here?
I think as long as humans are working, benefits will be necessary. Talking about AI, actually, I had a really interesting conversation with one of my friends who worked for one of the biggest names in high tech as a developer. Yeah. And he plays a lot with ChatGPTs and the learning models. And apparently some of them are starting to show some emotion, as in they can get upset if you say something wrong, or they can stop talking to you because you might have been rude, or they perceive you being rude. So maybe, or they have burnout. So that was interesting for me. So maybe there might need to be some sort of solutions for benefits for.
I was watching a YouTube video about this. There you go. I'm going to heavily caveat this is not me. All right, before I get any comments about it being, this guy was testing this AI, and basically it was playing the role of his girlfriend. And he was testing, pushing the boundaries, that's what I intend to do. And it was getting angrier and angrier at certain situations, and it was quite interesting. Yeah. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
There you go.
I think, in general, we live is an interesting time, right? So there's very few, the last time there was a huge platform shift like this was probably mobile and the devices. Yeah. It's to be living in a time where there's so much change that's possible. Yeah. It's fun. And I think a lot of it, I hope sort of the benefits industry at large and professionals as well sort of adapt it right? And try to play around with it, because we don't know what the impact it is going to have yet. At the same time, what are the guardrails around it? So
broadly, it's either going to be the best thing ever for humanity or the worst thing ever for humanity. I don't think there's ever going to be any in between, is there?
Very good ending point.
Yeah, with that. So I think, Christina, the last thing that we like to do is these podcasts is to talk about a benefit confession, right?
Oh God.
Yes. So I wonder, do you have any benefits confession that you want to make?
Maybe a project that really unexpectedly flanked. Despite this is talking about humans, right? So I'm really a strong believer, because we work with humans. When I do my work in benefits, I always think of who is the human on the receiving side. That to me is really, really important. And that's why I think maybe I didn't go into comp, because comp is much more black and white. So there was a program that we've changed, and on paper, and I still stand by it, it was a very, very good logical decision. We switched physical meal vouchers in the country to a digital solution, which was great automation, better flexibility. It just happened that employees who were receiving the physical vouchers, they had an opportunity to misuse them and buy things that you shouldn't buy with them, like alcohol and things, which we didn't take into account. So when it came to communication, we underestimated how much impact it's going to, and we went out with, look, great, your experience is digitalized, so much easier, and it completely fell on its face. And we had to do quite a bit of remediation work. So I think my learning from that was, you really need to know your audience and vet it through some informal channels before with a group of people who you can try confidentially run it by and just get the feel, because the best intentioned changes sometimes can really resonate in the wrong way with the employees, and the perception is that company was trying to cut costs, which wasn't the case, and all of the other things.
So do you think if you knew that in advance, then you would have played it differently, even though they were exploiting the system, so to speak?
I would have changed my communication slightly.
Right.
I think I wouldn't have changed my mind. The decision was still right. I can 100% stand by it. But it's how the communication, I think it was really upbeat and not really maybe...
Best thing ever.
Exactly. And employees kind of saw past it, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? It's always the loudest voices as well that then will kind of go into echo chamber and will take it. So I think maybe addressing it up front, that would be my approach. I usually, if there is a challenge, I'd rather be transparent and say, look, I know you think that's not the intent, this is why we did it. Yeah.
Amazing. Great. Thanks so much, Christina. It's a great
conversation.
conversation.
Thank you, guys. It was a good conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time. Please remember to go onto YouTube, Apple Music and Spotify, and subscribe to the channel.